Hello everyone, welcome to Hopeful Moments 1. Today, we're diving into a real-life story about an invasion of privacy, a lack of respect for personal boundaries, and how some people can thoughtlessly impose themselves on others without a second thought. What makes this situation even more frustrating is that it happened during the delicate postpartum period, a time when a mother needs support, love, and respect, but instead, she was met with unnecessary stress. Have you ever imagined a near stranger suddenly showing up at your doorstep unannounced? Not only that, but they step into your home, completely disregarding your family's needs, and start giving unsolicited parenting advice that they themselves failed to follow successfully? Sounds unbelievable, right? Well, that's exactly the story we're about to explore today. This story is unexpected, bizarre, frustrating, and, in some ways, darkly humorous. The person confidently sharing their parenting wisdom is the same person who failed to raise independent children, making their advice both laughable and contradictory. Join me as we unpack this experience, reflect on its lessons, and discuss how to protect personal space, set clear boundaries, and handle uncomfortable situations like this. If you find this story interesting and insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay connected with Hopeful Moments 1. Just 4 days after I gave birth, a physically and emotionally exhausting experience, I was still recovering, in pain, and adjusting to my new role as a mother. And then, out of nowhere, a complete stranger to me, my husband's friend's mother, showed up unannounced at our doorstep. But what shocked me the most wasn't just a surprise visit, it was how she got our address. Instead of asking my husband directly, she lied to her daughter-in-law to extract the information, claiming she wanted to send a congratulatory gift. But instead of simply mailing a package, she chose to show up in person, completely disregarding the fact that we hadn't invited her, we weren't expecting her, and we weren't even close. This wasn't just an invasion of privacy, it was a blatant disregard for boundaries at a time when my family needed space and rest the most. Instead of allowing me the peace and privacy I desperately needed, I found myself dealing with an uninvited and unwelcome guest. As if the unexpected visit and intrusion weren't bad enough, she completely ignored basic health precautions. Even though COVID-19 was still a major concern, she hadn't been vaccinated, wasn't wearing a mask, and still showed up at my doorstep, exposing me, a recovering new mother, and my vulnerable newborn to potential risks. Her actions weren't just inconsiderate, they were dangerously irresponsible. While the rest of the world was making efforts to protect the most vulnerable, she chose to act recklessly, putting my baby and me in harm's way just to satisfy her own whims. And yet, the most frustrating part? Instead of showing care, support, or even basic courtesy, she started giving me unsolicited parenting advice, completely outdated and absurd. As I struggled with exhaustion, physical pain, and the overwhelming responsibilities of caring for my newborn, she offered no help or comfort. Instead, she criticized how I soothed my crying baby. When I gently rubbed my baby's back to calm them down, she immediately warned me. "Oh, be careful. If you keep spoiling the baby like that, you'll be doing this for the rest of your life. They'll never leave your side." This was, without a doubt, one of the most ridiculous things I had ever heard. My newborn was just 4 days old, still adjusting to life outside the womb, and she was already suggesting that I was spoiling them? Being a first-time mom is already overwhelming. The last thing I needed was unwanted, baseless advice from someone who had no business giving it. And the irony? She wasn't even successful in raising independent children. Her 2 sons, both over 30 years old, still lived at home, completely dependent on her financially and emotionally. So not only was her advice irrelevant, but it was also deeply hypocritical. Her presence wasn't just an invasion of my personal space, it also added unnecessary emotional stress to an already difficult postpartum period. Giving birth is a life-changing event, one that doesn't just transform the body but also deeply affects a mother's mental state. During this sensitive time, what a new mother needs most is peace, support, and respect for her boundaries. Instead of bringing comfort or understanding, this woman disregarded all of that, prioritizing her own needs over mine. From this experience, I learned a valuable lesson about the importance of setting firm boundaries and protecting personal space, especially after a major life event like childbirth. Because at the end of the day, respecting someone's privacy isn't just about etiquette, it's about ensuring their well-being, their peace of mind, and their right to heal and adjust in their own time. Giving birth isn't just a beautiful journey of bringing new life into the world, it's also a physically and emotionally demanding transition for the mother. And if there's one thing every new mom deserves, it's the space and support to recover in peace. No matter how smoothly childbirth goes, a mother must still face a series of inevitable challenges. The prolonged physical pain, the exhaustion after labor, and the sudden, intense hormonal changes can leave the body in a weakened state while making the mind more vulnerable, sensitive, and unstable than ever. Postpartum recovery is not just about waiting for physical wounds to heal, it is a long process of emotional balance, adapting to a new role, and, most importantly, confronting pressures she has never experienced before. A first-time mother not only has to learn how to care for a tiny life completely dependent on her but also battle invisible anxieties, sometimes feelings of self-doubt, fear, or even postpartum depression. That is why the postpartum period is when a mother needs the most understanding, care, and support from those around her, not unnecessary pressures from the unconscious actions of others. Beyond physical exhaustion, childbirth can also bring severe mental impacts, sometimes silent yet persistent, deeply affecting a mother's psychological state. Postpartum anxiety, PPA, and postpartum depression, PPD, are not just medical terms but real struggles that many mothers face. However, not everyone can recognize or acknowledge them from the start. The invisible fears, the constant anxiety when caring for the baby, or even moments of self-doubt, wondering if she is capable of being a good mother, can all accumulate over time, pushing her into a downward spiral. Sometimes, these emotions do not manifest clearly but are hidden in thoughts, in long sleepless nights, and in moments of loneliness despite being surrounded by people. And in that fragile stage, an unintentional remark, a thoughtless comment, or even an invasion of personal space from someone else can become the final straw, deeply wounding the mother, making her feel insecure, or pushing her further into negative thoughts. Therefore, understanding, empathy, and respecting the personal boundaries of a postpartum mother are not just matters of etiquette but essential acts that help her navigate this sensitive period with more ease. This is the story of my first childbirth, a journey not only filled with happiness but also immense challenges, mixed emotions, and profound lessons I will never forget. The birth went smoothly, but even when everything went according to plan, postpartum recovery was still an arduous journey. My body was exhausted, my emotions were unstable, and ahead lay countless unknowns waiting to unfold. I was kept in the hospital for 3 days for health monitoring since it was my first childbirth, and my husband wanted to ensure that both the baby and I were completely stable before returning home. Those 3 days were not just about allowing my body to start recovering but also a time for me to gradually adapt to my new role, the role of a mother. Before this, I had imagined this moment, holding my baby, hearing the cries, soothing them to sleep, but only when facing it did I truly understand that being a mother is not only a sacred duty but also a real challenge. Conflicting emotions kept flooding in. I felt happy but also anxious. I was proud, yet I couldn't shake off the doubt about whether I was capable of taking care of my child. I wanted to hold my baby in my arms forever, yet I craved a full night's sleep after all the exhausting days. Those moments made me realize that a mother doesn't just give birth to a child, she also gives birth to herself in an entirely new role. However, after leaving the safety of the hospital and returning home, I quickly realized that reality was far harsher than I had imagined. There were no longer doctors or nurses constantly available to help me whenever I needed, no call button within arm's reach. Now, my husband and I were the only medical team for our child, and that overwhelmed me more than anything. My body was still sore from the exhausting labor, my mind was shaky due to sleep deprivation, and even though I was too tired to keep my eyes open, I couldn't stop watching over my baby. I feared that if I let my guard down for just a moment, something would happen. The few moments I could lie down were overshadowed by the relentless worries flooding my mind. Is my baby okay? Am I doing this right? Is my baby breathing normally? Should I wake them up to feed? These thoughts repeated over and over, like an endless loop. I realized that being a mother is not just about love but also an endless journey of sacrifices and anxieties. Fortunately, my in-laws arrived just in time to help, providing a solid support system during those early, overwhelming days. They didn't intend to stay long, just enough to assist with the most essential tasks, from tidying up the house, sharing newborn care tips, to offering emotional support so I wouldn't feel so alone in this new journey of motherhood. Their presence was like a warm breeze, allowing me to relax a little and worry less about the uncertainties ahead. But that peace didn't last long. Less than 2 hours after they arrived, an unexpected incident occurred, a visitor, uninvited, bringing more disturbance than congratulations. Just 2 hours after my in-laws arrived, when I hadn't even had the chance to fully appreciate their help, a completely unfamiliar couple to me, the parents of one of my husband's friends, suddenly appeared at our door. No message to check in, no call to ask in advance, they just stood there, as if our home was a place they could drop by any time. Seeing them, a wave of confusion and discomfort rose within me. At that moment, I was still reeling from the physical and emotional toll of childbirth, hadn't slept properly in days, and was still trying to adjust to taking care of a newborn. In that moment, all I wanted was a private space, a safe and peaceful environment to recover. But their sudden presence shattered all of that. Why were they here now? They had never reached out during my pregnancy, not a single message of concern, no words of encouragement, not even a comment on Facebook, the only place where they might have learned about my pregnancy journey. They had been completely absent while I struggled through morning sickness, nowhere to be found as I anxiously awaited my baby's arrival. Yet now, only days after I had given birth, when I was exhausted and craving privacy more than ever, they suddenly showed up at my doorstep as if we had a long-standing close relationship. Their total absence during the difficult journey, followed by their abrupt appearance at the most sensitive moment, left me baffled. Why did people who never cared enough to send a distant congratulation feel entitled to show up unannounced at my home? The woman's name was Karen. Instead of asking her own son, the only one with a connection to my husband, she took a more indirect and calculated approach, contacting her daughter-in-law. Perhaps she knew her son wouldn't easily give out our address since he wasn't particularly close to her. Instead, she targeted her daughter-in-law, someone less likely to refuse, not because she wanted to help Karen, but simply because she didn't think too much in that moment. At the time Karen's daughter-in-law received her message, she was juggling 2 small children, a toddler and a preschooler. Between the crying, the chaos, and the countless responsibilities, she probably wasn't clear-headed enough to realize she was unintentionally violating someone else's privacy. In a distracted moment, overwhelmed by the demands of motherhood, she had shared our address without much thought. But this wasn't her fault. She didn't intentionally violate my privacy, nor did she mean to cause any trouble. She was just a busy mother caught in an unexpected situation, unaware of the consequences of what seemed like a harmless action. Later, when she realized what had happened, she took the initiative to apologize. But I knew she didn't deserve any blame. The only person truly responsible in this situation was Karen, the one who took advantage of her daughter-in-law's busy schedule to achieve her own personal goals, using a calculated approach to get what she wanted, regardless of the consequences it might bring to others. Why did Karen need our address so urgently? She claimed it was to send a gift to my family. A seemingly reasonable and harmless reason, at least on the surface. If the gift had simply been mailed, I wouldn't have cared. Although we had only met her about 3 times before, I had no bad impressions or issues with her. But the issue here wasn't the gift itself, it was how she chose to deliver it. Instead of using a shipping service, as most people would when sending a gift to a family with a newborn, she decided to bring the gift directly to my doorstep. At the most sensitive time, just a few days after I had given birth, she showed up unannounced, without asking if we were ready to receive visitors, acting as if she had every right to do so. This made her gift-giving excuse more suspicious than ever. Was it really just an act of kindness, or was it simply a pretext for her to show up at my house without my consent? Did she truly want to give a gift, or did she just want to impose her presence? I couldn't help but wonder, if the gift was so important, Why didn't she choose the simplest and most reasonable way to send it? Yet, instead of choosing the simplest and most reasonable option, mailing the gift like everyone else, she decided to personally deliver it to our home. The most absurd part? She didn't even live nearby. In fact, she had to cross an entire mountain to get here, yet she somehow thought driving that far was faster than just putting the gift in a mailbox and letting a delivery service handle the rest. But the absurdity didn't stop there. The excuse she gave for her decision was even more ridiculous. She believed that delivering the gift in person would be safer. Safer for whom? Not for me, a mother who had just given birth, nor for my newborn baby, whose immune system was still extremely fragile. Because, as it turned out, she wasn't vaccinated against COVID-19. And the reason she wasn't vaccinated? Not because of health concerns or any legitimate medical reason, but because she believed that her political beliefs would protect her. A statement both absurd and dangerous, especially when dealing with a family with a newborn. Even though science and reality had clearly proven that vaccines help protect people from illness, she chose to ignore all of that and put herself, and others, at risk, just because of an unfounded belief. She knocked on the door. A seemingly simple action, but one that set off an entirely unwanted situation. My mother-in-law, unaware of the circumstances or Karen's true intentions, opened the door without a second thought. To her, it was probably just another visitor, nothing to be cautious about. But for me, it was a completely different story. At that moment, I was in an extreme state of postpartum anxiety. My mind was overwhelmed with fear and worry, not about trivial things, but about one thing only, my baby's safety. I didn't care who was at the door, didn't pay attention to who was stepping inside. I only had one concern, and that was protecting my newborn. When a mother has just given birth, her world shrinks, revolving solely around the child she has just brought into the world. Everything else fades into the background, conversations, uninvited guests, even basic social courtesies. So when this woman walked into my house, I didn't feel curiosity, nor did I feel any obligation to welcome her. I only felt discomfort and unease. Karen immediately brushed past my mother-in-law, not waiting for an invitation, not caring whether she was allowed in, and marched straight into my home as if she had every right to be there. Without hesitation, she reached out, intending to hold my baby, my fragile, 4-day-old newborn. I reacted instantly. No! My voice rang out, firm and unwavering, leaving no room for negotiation. My body tensed, and my maternal instincts surged forward like an unshakable force. I didn't need to think, didn't need to consider politeness. I only knew that no one, besides me and my husband, had the right to touch my baby without permission. Yet Karen either didn't notice the tension in the air or deliberately ignored it. She launched into a stream of unsolicited comments, an endless monologue that no one had asked for. But I wasn't listening. Every word she said blurred into background noise, meaningless and irrelevant. All my focus was on my baby. He started fussing, perhaps sensing my tension, or maybe reacting to the sudden presence of a stranger. I gently comforted him, rubbing his back instinctively, trying to create a sense of security. But the situation only became more uncomfortable. I knew my baby was hungry and needed to nurse, but I didn't feel comfortable doing so in front of this woman. If I wanted to move to a more private space, I would have to walk past her, something I had no desire to do. I didn't trust her. I didn't want to give her even the slightest opportunity to reach for my baby, even for a fleeting moment. So I stayed put, tense and powerless in my own home, just hoping she would leave soon. I continued to rub my baby's back gently, a natural maternal gesture to soothe him. But then, Karen's voice broke through my focus. "Oh, be careful. If you spoil him like that, you'll have to do it for the rest of your life, and he'll never leave your side." She burst into laughter, a smug, self-satisfied chuckle as if she had just shared some universal truth that I was too naive to understand. Her husband followed suit, laughing in a strange, almost forced manner. And me? I froze for a moment, completely stunned. I glanced at my husband, then at my in-laws. We all exchanged bewildered looks, as if we had just witnessed something so absurd that it defied belief. No one spoke, no one reacted immediately, we just stared at her, as if she had said something so ridiculous that it wasn't even worth responding to. The most ironic part? She was the one living in the exact situation she was warning me about. She had 2 sons in their 30s still living at home, refusing to move out, completely dependent on her for all their expenses. And yet, here she was, lecturing me about not spoiling my child, even as she was dealing with the consequences of her own parenting choices. Fortunately, the awkward silence and uncomfortable atmosphere worked in my favor. She seemed to sense that she was unwelcome, that her words had failed to impress or gain approval. So, before long, she left, leaving behind a wave of relief that I had never appreciated so much. This story isn't just about an unannounced visit, it's a powerful reminder of personal boundaries, privacy, and respect, especially for those who have just gone through a life-changing event like childbirth. Karen's actions weren't just inappropriate, they revealed a complete lack of awareness and sensitivity in intruding on a newly formed family's space. From this situation, there are some important lessons to take away. Respect others' privacy, no matter how well-intended. Showing up unannounced, especially during sensitive times, can place unnecessary stress on others. Good intentions don't always justify actions. A thoughtful gift does not excuse violating someone's privacy. If you truly care, ask if the person is comfortable with your presence. Maintain firm personal boundaries. As a mother, I've learned that protecting myself and my child from unwanted influences is the top priority. Saying no firmly and setting clear boundaries can help prevent uncomfortable situations. Giving birth is a challenging journey, and true care is not about intrusion but about respect and understanding. I hope this story helps more people recognize the importance of setting boundaries and acting with sensitivity in every situation. In life, genuine care isn't just about what we do for others, it's about how we respect their emotions and personal space. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for someone isn't to show up unannounced or offer unsolicited advice, but to listen, understand, and put yourself in their shoes. If you want to support someone, whether it's a new parent, someone facing difficulties, or simply a person who needs some personal space, ask before you act. A simple question like, "How can I help?" or "Would you like me to stop by?" can make all the difference between a kind gesture and an unintended intrusion. Setting boundaries doesn't mean creating distance, it's a way of showing respect. Approach life with more sensitivity and understanding, and you'll find that your relationships become stronger and more meaningful.